The October wind carried a bite as Violet Thompson stood by her grandmother Clara's grave, the scent of fresh earth mingling with the roses she'd laid on the polished oak casket. The small cemetery on the outskirts of their Ohio city was quiet, save for the soft murmurs of mourners, neighbors, church friends, a few of Clara's old antiques clients. Violet, 32, had spared no expense for the funeral, choosing a sleek granite headstone engraved with, and a delicate ivy motif, Clara's favourite. She'd spoken at the service, her voice steady despite the ache in her chest, weaving memories of Clara's warmth, her knack for finding beauty in chipped teacups, her fierce love that had raised Violet from a grieving 6-year-old to the woman she was now. Clara Elizabeth Moore, beloved grandmother. As the last guests departed, Violet lingered, her dark coat flecked with mist. Clara's death, a heart failure, peaceful but sudden, had torn a hole in her world. She'd cared for her grandmother through arthritis, memory lapses, and countless hospital visits, never wavering, even when it meant sleepless nights or missed plans with her husband, Ryan. Now, standing alone, Violet felt unmoored, the weight of loss heavier than she'd braced for. She whispered a final goodbye, her breath clouding in the chill, and turned away, tears streaking her face. Back at her apartment, a cramped rental she shared with Ryan, Violet's phone rang as she kicked off her boots. An unfamiliar number, but the voice was professional, measured. "Ms. Thompson, I'm Leonard Price, your grandmother's attorney. Clara left a will, and I'd like you to come to my office to review it." Violet's brow furrowed. Clara had lived modestly, her bungalow filled with thrift store treasures. A will seemed unexpected, but she agreed to meet the next day, curiosity nudging through her grief. Price's office, a tidy suite downtown, smelled of leather and coffee. The lawyer, a wiry man in his 60s, greeted her with a gentle smile, gesturing to a chair. "Clara was clear about her wishes," he began, sliding an envelope across the desk. "She left this letter for you." Violet's fingers traced her name in Clara's elegant script, her throat tightening. She opened it carefully, unfolding a single sheet. Tears spilled down Violet's cheeks, each word a thread stitching her to Clara's memory. She pressed the letter to her chest, letting the sobs come, unashamed. Price waited patiently, then handed her a tissue and a small framed photograph. "Clara wanted you to have this too," he said softly. Violet took it, her breath catching as a smile broke through her tears. The photo showed Clara in a hospital bed, her leg in a cast, grinning weakly, while a teenage Violet, 17, and in a sparkly prom dress, made a goofy face beside her. The memory flooded back. Prom night, junior year, when Clara had slipped on the porch steps, fracturing her tibia. Violet had been ready to leave, her hair pinned up, but when the ambulance came, she'd refused to go to the dance. "I'm staying with you," she'd told Clara, ignoring her grandmother's protests. They'd spent the night in the ER, Violet cracking jokes to keep Clara's spirits up, the prom forgotten. Wiping her eyes, Violet stood, clutching the letter and photo. "Thank you, Mr. Price. This means everything." She turned to leave, assuming the meeting was over, but he raised a hand. "One more thing, Ms. Thompson. Please sit." Puzzled, she sank back into the chair as he opened a file. "Clara left you an inheritance, $2.7 million, from her antiques business and investments she made decades ago." Violet's jaw dropped, the number so vast it felt like a misprint. "Million," she stammered. "Grandma lived like she had nothing." Price nodded, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "She was frugal, but shrewd. She wanted you to have security, to live without worry." Violet's mind spun. Clara, in her faded cardigans, had hidden a fortune, all for her. The weight of it, mingled with the letter's warmth and the photo's memory, overwhelmed her. Clara's love had always been her true gift, but this legacy was a new chapter, one Violet could scarcely imagine as she stepped into the daylight, the framed photo tucked under her arm. Violet stepped out of the office, clutching a manila folder to her chest. At 32, she taught art history at the local community college, her days filled with lectures on Renaissance masters and grading papers. But today, everything had changed. The sum felt unreal, like something from a movie, not her modest life. Clara had lived frugally in a tidy bungalow on the edge of town, her pension stretched thin for groceries and utilities. Violet never suspected she had such wealth. Amassed from a savvy antiques business in her younger years, later invested in stocks that grew over decades. The lawyer's words still echoed, "Your grandmother wanted you to have a secure future." Violet's heart swelled with gratitude, her eyes stinging as she pictured Clara's warm smile. She hurried along the sidewalk, leaves crunching under her boots, her mind racing with possibilities. She and her husband, Ryan, had been married 5 years, renting a cozy but cramped apartment while saving for a home. Ryan, a project manager at a construction firm, often talked of quitting to start his own design studio. This inheritance could make it happen. A house in a good neighborhood, a family, a life free from financial strain. Violet couldn't wait to tell him. The red brick apartment building, a sturdy relic of the early 2000s, loomed ahead. Their third-floor unit was comfortable, with a view of the park, but Violet longed for a place of their own, where they could paint walls without a landlord's permission. She climbed the stairs, her excitement bubbling, already imagining Ryan's grin when she shared the news. As she reached their door, voices stopped her cold, Ryan's low murmur and a woman's sharp tone. Abigail, his older sister, who lived an hour away and worked as a corporate lawyer. Their relationship was polite but strained. Abigail never hid her belief that Ryan could have done better than a starving artist like Violet. Curious, Violet paused, her hand hovering over the doorknob. $2.7 million, Ryan. That's life-changing money, Abigail was saying, her voice urgent. You need to act fast before Violet gets any ideas. Violet's breath caught. How did they know? She hadn't told anyone yet, planning to surprise Ryan over dinner. I know, but she's my wife, Ryan replied, his tone hesitant. I can't just take it. How would that even work? Abigail scoffed. No prenup, right? Half is legally yours. But why settle for half? Get her to open a joint account, transfer the money, and you're set. I'll draft the papers to make it airtight. Violet's knees weakened, her grip tightening on the folder. Her heart pounded, drowning out the world. What then? Ryan asked, his voice shifting, curious now. She'll figure out I tricked her. Then you leave, Abigail said coldly. Find someone else, younger and prettier maybe. Buy a house, start that studio you're always on about. Live like you deserve, not tied to some teacher scraping by. A chill ran through Violet. This wasn't a misunderstanding. They were plotting to rob her, to unravel the life she thought they shared. Ryan's silence stretched, and when he spoke, his words cut deeper than any knife. You're right. I've played the good husband long enough. With that money, I can finally have the life I want. Violet stood rooted to the spot, the folder trembling in her hands. The man she loved, the future she'd dreamed of, crumbled in an instant, replaced by a truth too cruel to fathom. Violet's world tilted, but she forced herself to breathe, her back pressed against the hallway wall outside their apartment. Ryan's voice, calm, calculating, still echoed in her mind, plotting with Abigail to steal her grandmother's inheritance. The $2.7 million, meant to secure her future, had turned her husband into a stranger. She wanted to burst through the door, scream her hurt, but instinct held her back. Confronting him now would only make him cagier, and she needed time to protect herself. Slipping downstairs, she called Rachel, her best friend since high school, who lived across town. I need to see you, Violet said, her voice tight. Something's wrong with Ryan. Rachel didn't hesitate. In the taxi, Violet stared out at the city's lights, clutching the folder of inheritance documents. Clara's gift, meant for hope, now felt like a target on her back. At Rachel's cozy duplex, Violet poured out the story, overhearing Ryan and Abigail's scheme to trick her into a joint account and leave her. Rachel's eyes widened, then narrowed. That snake, You can't go back there, Vi. He's dangerous. Violet shook her head. I have to. If I disappear, he'll know I heard. I need to act normal, figure out my next move. Rachel frowned but nodded. Fine, but you're not doing this alone. We'll get you a lawyer. The next morning, Violet returned home, her stomach knotted. Ryan greeted her with a warm smile, brewing coffee in their sunlit kitchen. Missed you last night? He said, handing her a mug. Everything okay at Rachel's? His concern felt like a mask, and Violet forced a smile. Yeah, just girl talk. Got carried away. She sipped the coffee, watching him over the rim, searching for any sign of the man she'd married. His grey eyes, once so familiar, now seemed to weigh her every word. At her desk later, Violet booked an appointment with Vincent Gregory, a family law attorney recommended by Rachel's colleague. That afternoon, in his sleek downtown office, Vincent listened intently as she recounted the overheard conversation. Legally, the inheritance is yours alone, he assured her, adjusting his glasses. It's not marital property unless you voluntarily share it. Ryan can't touch it without your consent. Relief washed over her, but Vincent's next words sobered her. Still, be cautious. Change all your passwords. Banking, email, everything. If he's desperate, he might try something underhanded. Back home, Violet followed Vincent's advice, updating her passwords on her laptop and phone in the quiet of their bedroom. Unbeknownst to her, Ryan had installed spyware on her laptop months ago, a precaution he'd taken when their savings talks grew tense, a fact she'd only learn later. For now, she felt a small measure of control, though the act of secrecy in her own home, their small, scuffed kitchen table. Determined to act normal and avoid raising his suspicions, she forced a steady breath, her fingers tracing the chipped rim of her coffee mug. Ryan, she began, her voice deliberately light. The lawyer called today. Clara left me an inheritance, $2.7 million. His grey eyes widened, a broad grin splitting his face as he leaned forward, seizing her hand with a warmth that felt too eager. Babe, that's unbelievable. Holy crap, we're set. We could get a house in that new subdivision, start my design studio. God, we could even travel. This is life-changing. His excitement erupted in a rush of plans, his voice booming as he gestured animatedly, already mapping out a future Violet wasn't sure she trusted. She managed a tight smile, nodding along to mask the unease curling in her gut, sensing a calculated edge beneath his joy that made her skin prickle. Over the days following Violet's revelation, Ryan's behavior shifted with a calculated subtlety that set her nerves on edge. Ryan morphed into an almost caricature of a doting husband, brewing her favourite hazelnut coffee each morning, offering to handle errands, his grey eyes lingering with a warmth that felt rehearsed. At dinner, over plates of takeout Chinese, he'd ask probing questions, his tone casual but relentless. So, have you met with a financial advisor yet, babe? What's the plan for all that money? He'd say, chopsticks poised mid-air. Or, you thinking about a new place? Somewhere bigger, maybe? Violet, determined to act normal and avoid arousing suspicion, kept her responses vague, a tight smile masking her unease. Still figuring it out, she'd reply, stirring her lo mein, her stomach knotting as she caught the flicker of impatience in his grin. His sudden attentiveness, paired with questions that circled her inheritance like vultures, only deepened her wariness, hinting at the scheme she'd yet to uncover. Violet's pulse quickened, but she kept her voice light. It's a lot to process. I'm still figuring it out. He nodded, twirling his fork. Makes sense, but we should probably set up a joint account, right? Easier to manage big money together. The suggestion landed like a stone. It was exactly what Abigail had urged, and hearing it from Ryan's lips made her skin crawl. She forced a thoughtful look. Maybe, but I want to talk to a financial advisor first. Make sure we're smart about it. Ryan's smile tightened, a flicker of impatience crossing his face before he masked it. Sure, babe. Just don't wait too long. Opportunities like this don't sit around. That night, lying beside him in bed, Violet stared at the ceiling, her mind racing. Ryan's arm rested across her waist, a gesture that once felt comforting, but now suffocated her. She thought of her grandmother. She would sure have something wise to say to her. Memories flooded in. After a car accident claimed her parents, Violet arrived at Clara's doorstep, a frightened girl clutching a stuffed rabbit. Clara, then in her late 50s, didn't hesitate. She'd abandoned her antiques business, trading auctions and appraisals for bedtime stories and school lunches, becoming Violet's anchor. That sacrifice forged a bond deeper than duty. It was love, fierce and unyielding. As Clara aged, Violet's role shifted from cherished granddaughter to devoted caregiver. Violet drove her to doctor's appointments for arthritis, cooked low-sodium meals, and read aloud from Jane Austen novels when Clara's eyes grew too weak. Even when Clara's memory began to falter, mixing up dates or names, Violet stayed patient, taping reminders to the fridge and holding her hand through each foggy moment. "You're my rock, Violet," Clara would say, her voice frail but warm. Violet never wavered, committed to ensuring Clara's final years were dignified. In her late 20s, Violet met Ryan at a local art gallery opening. His chiseled features and easy charm turned heads, and when he approached her, quoting Matisse to compliment her scarf, Violet felt a spark. Clara, watching from a folding chair, saw the way Violet's eyes lit up. But Ryan couldn't loosen Violet's devotion. Their dates, coffee shops, riverside walks, were scheduled around Clara's needs. Violet often cut evenings short to check on her grandmother, texting Clara updates or rushing home if a neighbour reported a fall. Ryan at first masked his irritation with charm, but Clara remained a constant presence. When Violet invited him to dinner at the bungalow, she cooked Clara's favourite meatloaf, ensuring her grandmother joined the conversation. Ryan's polite nods grew strained as Clara recounted stories of her antiques days, but Violet beamed, hanging on every word. 2 years into their relationship, Ryan proposed over a candlelit dinner, sliding a modest diamond ring across the table. Violet's heart fluttered, but her answer was firm. "I love you, Ryan, but I can't say yes unless you're okay moving in with Clara and me. I won't leave her." Ryan's smile faltered, his fingers tightening around his wine glass. "Move in? With your grandmother? Violet, we need our own space, our own life." She shook her head, unwavering. "Clara's my family. She's not just some obligation. She's why I'm here, why I'm me." Ryan pushed, suggesting a nearby apartment, but Violet held firm. Reluctantly, he agreed, and they moved into Clara's bungalow, Violet converting the den into their bedroom. Ryan's concessions were grudging, his sighs audible when Clara needed help with her walker or interrupted their evenings with questions. The tension boiled over one humid summer night, 6 months before Clara's death. Violet was helping Clara into bed, adjusting pillows for her aching joints, when Ryan snapped from the living room. "Violet, she's fine. Can we have one night without you playing nurse?" His voice carried a bitter edge, and Violet, closing Clara's door softly, faced him, her calm masking a rising anger. "What's your problem, Ryan?" she asked, arms crossed. He threw up his hands. "She's just an old lady, Violet. I don't get why you're so glued to her. She's had her life. Think about ours, your future." Violet's eyes blazed, her voice low but fierce. "If it weren't for Clara, I'd have ended up in foster care, or worse. She gave up her career, her dreams, to raise me when no one else would. You don't get to call her just anything. I love you, but she's my family too." Ryan's face reddened, but he backed down. Clara, overhearing from her room, squeezed Violet's hand later, her eyes misty. "You're too good to me," she whispered. Violet shook her head, tucking the blanket around her. "You're worth it, Gran." Clara's health declined that winter, her heart weakening. Violet took leave from teaching, spending days by her bedside, reading poetry or playing Clara's old jazz records. Ryan kept his distance, his presence perfunctory. As she lay in bed reminiscing, she heard a soft knock, as if someone made a step. But then she realized she might be overreacting. But with each interaction with Ryan, Her worries mounted. Quietly, she contacted a realtor and rented a modest one-bedroom apartment on the other side of the city, a nondescript brick building tucked in a quiet neighborhood near the river. She didn't tell Ryan, sharing the address only with Rachel and her lawyer, Vincent. The apartment, with its bare walls and thrift store furniture, was her contingency plan, a safe base to retreat to if Ryan's intentions turned darker. Violet moved a few essentials there, clothes, books, Clara's keepsake box, envisioning it as a haven she'd fully inhabit if push came to shove. At their old apartment, where Violet returned daily to keep up appearances, Ryan's charm had curdled into something sharper. Over breakfast, he'd linger on the topic of the inheritance, his suggestions cloaked in care. "We could buy a house in that new development by the lake," he said one morning, spreading jam on toast. "Gorgeous properties. Perfect for a family." His eyes flicked to her, gauging her reaction. Violet nodded vaguely, her stomach twisting. "Sounds nice, but I'm not ready to decide yet." His jaw tightened, but he dropped it, the air between them thick with unspoken tension. 2 weeks later, as Ryan leaned against the counter, his arms crossed and eyes narrowed, she knew he'd uncovered her secret. "Why are you renting an apartment, Violet?" he asked, his voice low, almost casual but laced with suspicion. "I saw the lease agreement in the email." Violet's pulse raced, but she forced a calm facade, determined not to betray the fear clawing at her. She'd been careful, but Ryan's knack for snooping, likely tied to the spyware she'd yet to discover, had caught her off guard. "It's just a backup," she said, stirring her tea to avoid his gaze. "The college might need me for evening classes, and it's closer to campus. Saves on gas." The excuse sounded flimsy even to her, and Ryan's brow furrowed, his skepticism palpable. "A backup?" he pressed, stepping closer, his tone sharpening. "You're paying rent for a whole apartment just for evening classes? Come on, Violet, what's the address? Why didn't you tell me?" She scrambled for another lie, her mind racing. "It's temporary, Ryan. I got a deal through a colleague, and I thought, maybe we could use it as a getaway spot." The words crumbled under his stare, and his lips twisted into a skeptical smirk. "A getaway spot? You're not making sense. Are you seeing someone? Hiding something?" His questions grew relentless, probing for cracks in her story, but Violet deflected, her voice strained. "It's not like that. I just needed a place to think, with everything going on." Ryan's patience snapped, his voice rising as he threw his hands up, the kitchen feeling smaller with his anger. "Think? Violet, what the hell's wrong with you? You're sneaking around, renting secret apartments, lying to me. Are you cheating? Or is it the money, keeping it all for yourself, shutting me out?" His accusations stung, twisting her caution into betrayal, and Violet felt cornered, her resolve fraying. His towering presence loomed as he stepped closer, demanding, "Tell me why, Violet." "Right now." Intimidated, her back against the counter, she couldn't hold back anymore, her voice trembling but firm. "You know exactly why, Ryan. I don't feel safe. Not with you, not after everything." He froze, his eyes narrowing, but his tone softened, feigning hurt. "Safe? I'm your husband, the one person you're supposed to trust, and you're treating me like some stranger, betraying me, letting me down. I'm always here to protect you, and this is how you repay me?" His words dripped with reproach, painting her as the villain, but Violet saw through the manipulation, her anger igniting. "Protect me," she snapped, her voice breaking as the truth surged out. "I heard you, Ryan. With Abigail, that day I came back from the lawyers. You were plotting to trick me into a joint account, to steal the inheritance and leave me for someone better. Don't you dare talk about trust." Ryan's face paled, his bravado crumbling as he stepped back, hands raised defensively. "Violet, wait. You've got it all wrong," he stammered, his voice suddenly conciliatory. "Abigail was just talking crazy, throwing out ideas. I told her it was wrong, that I'd never do that to you. You're my wife. I love you. I shut her down, I swear." His eyes pleaded, but the desperation in his tone rang hollow. Violet's anger flared, her voice sharp and unwavering. You've changed, Ryan. Ever since you found out about the inheritance. Suddenly you're all sweet, brewing my coffee, asking about my plans for the money. And Clara, you never said a kind word about her until you learned she left me millions. Now you call her remarkable, inspiring. It's all fake. She jabbed a finger toward him, her memories flooding back. You used to roll your eyes when I stayed late to help her, complained she was holding me back. Don't pretend you cared about her. Ryan's jaw clenched, but he forced a wounded look. That's unfair, Violet. I was frustrated, sure, but I always respected Clara. I love you, and I'm trying to build a future for us. Why can't you see that? His tone dripped with feigned hurt, but Violet saw the calculation in his eyes, the same glint she'd caught when he pressed her about joint accounts. She fell silent, her gaze steady, refusing to engage his deflections. Her silence seemed to unnerve him, his composure fraying as he tried again. Say something, Violet. I'm pouring my heart out here. Her silence stretched, a wall he couldn't breach. Finally, Ryan snapped, his voice rising as he threw his hands up. Then what? What's next, Violet? What do you want from me? His frustration spilled over, filling the small kitchen with a suffocating weight. Violet met his stare, her resolve hardening despite the intimidation of his looming presence. I don't know yet, she said, her voice low but firm. But I think our paths are going to go separate ways. Ryan's eyes widened, a flash of panic crossing his face before he switched tactics, his tone softening to a conciliatory plea. Violet, come on, don't say that. Let's work this out. I messed up, okay? I shouldn't have let Abigail talk like that, but I'm here. I'm sorry. Let's make peace. Start over. He stepped closer, reaching for her hand, his touch meant to reassure but feeling like a trap. Violet's skin crawled. She didn't feel safe, not with his sudden shift, not with the memory of his cold plotting with Abigail still vivid. His words, his closeness, only heightened her instinct to flee. I need some air, she said abruptly, sidestepping him to grab her coat from the hook by the door. Her voice trembled slightly, but she kept it steady, clinging to the excuse. I'm going for a walk to clear my head. We'll talk later. Ryan's brow furrowed, suspicion flaring again, but she didn't give him a chance to protest. Violet, wait, he started, but she was already out the door, her boots echoing in the hallway as she hurried to the stairwell. Violet didn't return. She stayed in her new apartment, determined not to come back. A week later, trouble found her outside the community college. As she left her last class, arms full of student sketches, Abigail stood by the parking lot, her tailored blazer and sharp gaze as intimidating as ever. Violet tensed, her pulse quickening. We need to talk, Abigail said, her voice smooth but edged. About you and Ryan. There's nothing to discuss, Violet replied, adjusting her bag. That's between us. Abigail stepped closer, lowering her voice. You're making a mistake, Violet. Walking away from him now with all that money? I'll make sure any divorce gets messy. Years in court, claims of mismanagement, whatever it takes. You won't walk away clean. Her threat was cold, legalistic, a lawyer's weapon rather than a fist, but it landed hard. Violet's throat tightened, but she held her ground. Do what you have to, Abigail. I'm not afraid of you. Abigail's lips curled, not quite a smile. You should be. She turned and strode to her car, leaving Violet rooted to the asphalt, her breath shallow. The encounter rattled her, but Abigail's words were a calculated jab, meant to scare her into compliance, and Violet wouldn't give her the satisfaction. That evening, walking to her new apartment, Violet noticed a dark sedan parked across the street, its tinted windows hiding the driver. The car was unfamiliar, but its presence felt wrong, like an itch she couldn't scratch. She hurried inside, locking the door behind her. From her window she saw the sedan linger, its engine idling before it finally pulled away. Her heart raced. Was Ryan watching her? Or Abigail? Someone else? She called the police, her voice steady despite her nerves. The officer listened patiently as she described the car, a black Ford, partial plate number scribbled on a napkin, but his response was measured. We'll log it and patrol the area, ma'am, but without a clear threat or more evidence, There's not much we can do. Could be a neighbor's visitor. Violet understood their constraints, limited manpower, no direct link to Ryan, but the dismissal left her uneasy. Just keep us posted if it happens again, the officer added. Violet woke to a grey dawn in her new apartment, the quiet hum of the city outside her window, a stark contrast to the storm brewing inside her. She'd spent another night at Rachel's, avoiding Ryan's increasingly pointed questions about the inheritance. But today she needed to check her bank account. Vincent had advised regular monitoring, and a nagging unease pushed her to act. Sitting on her thrift store couch, she opened her laptop and logged into her banking app, her fingers hesitating over the keys. The screen loaded, and her heart stopped. The balance, which should have read $2.7 million, showed just $3,214.87. Her breath caught, a cold sweat breaking out as she clicked the transaction history. A single transfer, dated 5 days ago, had siphoned nearly everything to an account she didn't recognize, labeled only with a string of numbers and a foreign bank's name. "No," she whispered, refreshing the page as if it could undo the truth. The numbers didn't change. Her hands trembled as she rummaged through her bag, finding a crumpled note she'd discovered in her mailbox the night before, slipped in without a stamp. Ryan's handwriting was unmistakable. "If you only listened, we could have worked this out." The words, taunting and final, burned into her. He'd done it, stolen Clara's gift, her future, and vanished. Violet's vision blurred with tears, her chest tightening until she could barely breathe. She called the bank, her voice shaking as she explained the theft to a manager named Karen. "The transaction was authorized from your device," Karen said, her tone professional but grim. "It used your login, password, and two-factor code. From our end, it looked legitimate." Violet's mind reeled. How? She'd changed her passwords, locked everything down. Karen continued. "We suspect spyware or a keylogger on your device. We'll investigate and alert the authorities, but if the money's offshore, recovery is challenging." Spyware. The word hit like a punch. Ryan must have planted it on her laptop months ago, back when they shared everything before she suspected his betrayal. She'd been so careful, but not careful enough. Hanging up, Violet sank to the floor, sobs racking her body. Clara's inheritance meant to bring security was gone, and with it, her dreams of a stable life. Rachel arrived within the hour, her face pale as Violet recounted the loss. "That bastard!" Rachel spat, pulling Violet into a hug. "We're going to the police. He's not getting away with this." At the station, Violet filed a report, her voice hollow as she described the note and the transfer. The officer, a weary man with a notepad, was candid. "Offshore accounts are a nightmare. We'll investigate, but don't hold your breath." His words felt like another door slamming shut, but Violet nodded, clinging to the faint hope of justice. Back at her apartment, Rachel brewed coffee, insisting Violet eat something. "You're not giving up," she said, sliding a plate of toast across the counter. "Clara wouldn't want that." The mention of her grandmother stirred something in Violet. She hadn't gone through Clara's belongings since the funeral, too raw with grief. Now, desperate for any anchor, she pulled a wooden keepsake box from a moving crate, one of Clara's few possessions Violet had kept. Inside were faded photos, letters, and a small envelope tucked in the lining, labelled for Violet, for a rainy day in Clara's elegant script. Her pulse quickened as she opened it. A key slipped out, along with a note. "Dear Violet, if you're reading this, I'm gone, and you're in trouble. I knew great wealth could bring danger, so I hid $500,000 in safe deposit box 457 at the First National Bank on Main Street. Use it wisely. Money isn't everything. Love and trust are. Your grandmother." Violet's eyes welled up, a mix of gratitude and awe washing over her. Clara, ever wise, had foreseen this storm and left her a lifeline. The $500,000 wasn't the millions she'd lost, but it was a chance to start over. She clutched the key, a spark of defiance igniting in her chest. Ryan thought he'd broken her, but Clara's foresight had given her a way forward. She wouldn't let him win. Not completely. Violet stood in the sterile vault of First National Bank on Main Street, the weight of Clara's key in her palm. Tears blurred her vision, not of loss this time, but of gratitude. Clara, with her quiet wisdom, had anticipated trouble, hiding this fortune to shield her granddaughter. Violet counted the cash, neat stacks of hundreds, and reviewed the bearer bonds, her mind steadying with each calculated step. Back at her apartment, Violet spread the documents on her kitchen counter, sipping tea Rachel had left brewing. She'd called Rachel the night before, her voice shaky with relief as she shared Clara's gift. Rachel had whooped over the phone. "Your grandma was a genius. That's enough to start over, Vi. Screw Ryan." Now, alone, Violet allowed herself a small smile. Rachel's enthusiasm was infectious, but Violet needed a plan, not just hope. She opened her laptop, now scrubbed of spyware by a tech friend Rachel knew, and researched her options. A modest condo in a safe neighborhood was within reach, maybe $300,000, leaving enough to invest conservatively and cover living expenses while she taught. No lavish spending, no flashy purchases. Clara's note had been clear. Wisdom trumped wealth. Violet wouldn't repeat her mistake of trusting too easily, of letting money blind her to people's motives. Ryan's note. That cruel taunt. Why leave it? The answer hit her like a cold wave. Misdirection. He'd wanted her to panic, to freeze, giving him time to move the money abroad before she alerted the police. His quick agreement to the divorce, his lack of fight over the inheritance, it was all a performance to lull her into complacency, making her think the danger was over. The realization stung, but it sharpened her focus. Ryan had underestimated her, and she'd used that against him. She called Vincent, her lawyer, to update him on the safety net. "Smart move, keeping this quiet," he said, his voice calm but approving. "Deposit the cash in a new account. Separate from the one Ryan targeted, and get that laptop checked again. Spyware's a nasty trick." Violet agreed, scheduling a bank visit for the next day. She'd open a high-security account, one requiring in-person verification to ensure the $500,000 stayed out of reach. Rachel stopped by that evening, carrying a bottle of cheap wine and a grin. "To Clara, the MVP," she toasted, raising her glass. Violet laughed, the sound foreign but welcome. "To starting over," she added, clinking glasses. Rachel leaned forward, her tone playful but firm. "And no husbands for a while, right? Let's keep the creeps at bay." "Deal," Violet said, her smile softening. "I need time to figure out who I am without all this." She gestured vaguely, encompassing the betrayal, the money, the fear. Rachel nodded, understanding. "You're tougher than you think, Vi. Clara knew it, and I know it." As Rachel left, Violet sat with Clara's note, rereading the words about love and trust. The $500,000 was a second chance, but Clara's real gift was perspective. Violet wouldn't let Ryan's greed define her. She'd build a life rooted in purpose, her teaching, her friendships, her own resilience. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time since that awful day outside her old apartment, Violet felt a flicker of control, a spark of defiance. She'd lost a fortune, but she hadn't lost herself. Violet's new apartment, though still sparse with unpacked boxes, was starting to feel like hers. Teaching kept her grounded, the routine of grading papers and lecturing on Impressionism a lifeline amid the chaos Ryan had left behind. But the shadow of his theft loomed, a wound that hadn't healed. Late Thursday afternoon, as Violet graded essays in her college office, her phone buzzed with a call from Detective Harris, the officer handling her case. His voice was brisk, carrying a rare edge of excitement. "Ms. Thompson, we've got a break. Your ex-husband's still in the city, hasn't skipped the country like we thought." Violet's pen froze mid-sentence. "Here? Why?" "It's stuck in a US account, part of a chain of transfers. His accomplice botched the final move and the bank flagged it. We've frozen the account. Her pulse quickened. So, I could get it back? It's possible, Harris said. We're tracing the accounts now, but Ryan's still here, likely scrambling to fix the mess. He's cocky. Thought he could outsmart us. Stay sharp. He might reach out. The news was a jolt of hope, tempered by unease. Ryan's arrogance had kept him close, but his presence felt like a storm cloud, gathering over her fragile calm. That night, Violet lay awake, the detective's words replaying. Ryan's failure to flee suggested desperation, not just greed. What was he planning? She double-checked her locks, the memory of the mysterious sedan outside her building still fresh. At 3 a.m., her phone shattered the silence, an unknown number flashing on the screen. Her heart thudded as she answered, voice low. Hello? Violet, it's me. Ryan's voice was taut, almost panicked, a stark contrast to his usual smooth confidence. We need to talk. About what? She sat up, gripping the phone, striving for calm. You stole my money and disappeared. What's left to say? It's not that simple, he said, words tumbling out. I didn't want to do it. I was forced. I owe people, dangerous people, a lot of money. They found out about your inheritance and demanded I get it. They're threatening me, Violet. And you. Forced? Her skepticism cut through the fog of sleep. Who? Ryan. Your sister. No, not Abigail. This is bigger. I'm in deep and they won't stop. We need to meet. Just you and me. No police. Why no police? She pressed, testing him. You've already gone to them, haven't you? His fear sharpened into accusation. They can't help, Violet. These people have connections. Meet me tomorrow, noon, at the park by the old mill, the gazebo by the pond. Come alone, please. She hesitated, his urgency unsettling her. Fine, I'll be there. Hanging up, she immediately dialed Detective Harris, waking him. She relayed Ryan's call, his claim of coerced theft, the meeting. Harris was dismissive. Classic con, blaming some shadowy mob to scare you. He's cornered because his transfer failed. We'll set up a sting at the park, grab him when he shows. Act normal, don't tip him off. Violet agreed, though Ryan's trembling voice lingered in her mind. Was he lying? Or had he stumbled into something real? Either way, she wouldn't face him alone. She texted Rachel, asking her to be nearby during the meeting, a backup in case things went south. Rachel replied instantly, I'll be there, Vi. Don't trust a word he says. As dawn broke, Violet stood at her window watching the city stir. The possibility of recovering her $2.7 million dangled like a lifeline, but Ryan's call had stirred a new fear. His desperation made him unpredictable, and the park meeting felt like stepping onto a tightrope. Violet arrived at the park by the old mill 15 minutes early, her sneakers crunching on the gravel path. The late morning sun glinted off the pond, but the serene scene did little to calm her nerves. The gazebo, a weathered wooden structure nestled by willows, stood empty. She adjusted her scarf, scanning the area for Rachel, who'd promised to watch from a nearby bench, and the police, hidden as Detective Harris had assured her. She sat in the gazebo, her hands clasped to steady them, rehearsing her role. Listen, probe, keep him talking until the police moved in. Rachel's text buzzed her phone. I'm here 20 yards away, picnic table, you've got this. Violet exhaled, bolstered by her friend's presence. At noon sharp, Ryan appeared, trudging down the path. He looked like a ghost of the man she'd married, unshaven, his jacket wrinkled, dark circles carving hollows under his eyes. His disheveled state almost stirred pity, but Violet steeled herself, remembering his taunting note and the empty bank account. Violet, he said, sitting across from her, his gaze darting to the trees. Thanks for coming, and for coming alone. She nodded, her expression neutral, giving nothing away about the officers concealed nearby. You said we needed to talk, so talk. He leaned forward, voice low and urgent. I know you think I'm a monster for taking the money, but I had no choice. I owe people, serious people, who don't mess around. They heard about your inheritance and gave me an ultimatum. Get it or else. They threatened you too. Who are these people? Violet asked, keeping her tone even, though her skepticism simmered. How'd you get mixed up with them? A bad investment, he said, rubbing his neck. I sank money into a startup, big promises, no delivery. Turned out some investors were connected. They lost millions and blamed me. When they learned about your $2.7 million, they saw it as their payback. Violet studied him, noting the rehearsed cadence of his words. So you stole from me to save us both. Convenient story. It's the truth, he insisted, eyes pleading. But here's the problem. The money's stuck. The last transfer didn't go through. Cops froze the account. They're losing patience, Violet. You need to tell the police it was a mistake, that you authorized the transfer. Otherwise, they'll come for us both. Her jaw tightened. You want me to lie to cover your theft? It's not about covering, he said, voice rising. It's about survival. If I don't pay, they'll kill me, and they know where you live. He softened, reaching for her hand. I still love you. We could take the money, disappear together, start fresh somewhere safe. The absurdity of his offer, fleeing with the man who'd robbed her, sparked a cold anger. No, Ryan, I'm not lying to the police and I'm not running with you. If you're in danger, turn yourself in. Let them protect you. His face hardened, the mask of desperation slipping. You're making a mistake, he snapped, hand diving into his jacket. Violet flinched, heart pounding, fearing a weapon. But before she could react, shouts erupted. Police officers burst from the bushes, tackling Ryan to the ground. His jacket spilled papers, legal documents, not a gun, as they cuffed him, his protests drowned by the chaos. Ryan Carter, you're under arrest for grand theft, an officer barked, reading his rights as they dragged him toward a squad car. Violet stood frozen, her breath ragged, until Rachel rushed over, pulling her into a hug. You okay? She asked, eyes wide. Violet nodded, still processing the blur of the moment. Detective Harris approached, his expression grim but satisfied. Good work, Ms. Thompson. Those papers? Forged power of attorney forms. He likely planned to pressure you into signing them. Make the transfer look legit. And his creditor story? Pure fiction. We've got his financials. No debts, no criminal ties. Just greed. Violet's shoulders sagged, relief mingling with exhaustion. Ryan's lies had been a final gambit, not to save her, but to salvage his scheme. The frozen account, Harris added, gave them a strong chance to recover her money. The courtroom was a sterile box of wood paneling and fluorescent lights, but to Violet Thompson, it felt like the end of a long, suffocating tunnel. She sat in the gallery, hands folded in her lap, as the judge delivered Ryan's sentence, 7 years in prison for grand theft. His accomplice, a bank teller named Derek, who'd exploited a security flaw to facilitate the $2.7 million theft, got 5 years. Abigail, Ryan's sister, faced a lighter but stinging blow, disbarment, and a 2-year suspended sentence for providing legal cover for the scheme. Violet watched them, her former husband and his sister, their faces etched with defiance and shame, and felt no triumph, only a quiet, aching sadness. The trial, spanning weeks, had peeled back the layers of Ryan's betrayal. Detective Harris's team uncovered how Derek, bribed with a cut of the loot, used stolen credentials to bypass Violet's account protections, guided by spyware Ryan had planted on her laptop. Abigail, the mastermind of the forged documents Violet nearly faced in the park, had orchestrated the legal framework, believing her lawyer's savvy would shield them. The frozen US account, halted by Derek's error, ensured the money never left the country, and after meticulous tracing, the bank restored every cent to Violet's account. Violet left the courthouse under a slate-grey sky, Rachel at her side. Justice served, Rachel said, squeezing her arm. You're free now. Violet nodded, but freedom felt bittersweet. A year had passed since Ryan's arrest, and Violet Thompson's new condo in the leafy suburb felt like home, its walls now adorned with framed prints of Klimt and a bookshelf stuffed with novels. The $2.7 million inheritance, fully restored, was carefully allocated. a modest home, secure investments, and a fund for personal growth. She'd started therapy 6 months ago, recommended by Rachel after nightmares of Ryan's Park confrontation kept her awake. Dr. Ellis, a soft-spoken woman with a knack for asking the right questions, helped Violet unravel the knots of fear and self-doubt. "Trust isn't rebuilt overnight," Dr. Ellis said in one session, her pen poised over a notepad. "It's small steps, testing, observing, letting people show you who they are." Violet took it to heart, journaling moments of connection with colleagues or students, retraining herself to see sincerity without expecting a hidden agenda. In late spring, Violet attended a pedagogy conference in Columbus, a chance to share her innovative teaching methods. The hotel ballroom buzzed with educators, and during a coffee break, she struck up a conversation with Ethan Harper, a literature professor from a nearby university. His wire-rimmed glasses and easy smile put her at ease as they bonded over a shared love of modernist poetry and quirky classroom anecdotes. "My students think Eliot's The Wasteland is just a long complaint," Ethan said, chuckling. "I tell them it's a puzzle, not a tantrum." Violet laughed, surprised by how natural it felt to talk with him. They exchanged emails, and over the next few weeks their correspondence grew. Thoughtful discussions about books, art, and teaching. Ethan's messages were warm but unpushy, often ending with an open-ended question that invited her to share without pressure. Violet appreciated his restraint. After Ryan's calculated charm, Ethan's quiet authenticity was a relief. Still, she held back, wary of repeating past mistakes. Therapy sessions with Dr. Ellis helped her navigate these fears, encouraging her to notice Ethan's consistency, how he remembered her favorite artists or checked in after a tough teaching day. One evening, over dinner at a cozy bistro, Ethan shared a story about a student who'd overcome dyslexia to write a brilliant essay. His pride in her success was genuine, devoid of ego. Violet found herself opening up about her love for teaching, how it tethered her to something bigger than herself. When the check came, Ethan insisted on splitting it, a small gesture that struck her as fair, not performative. These moments, his steady kindness, his lack of grand promises, chipped away at her guardedness. Months later, during a walk through a local arboretum, Violet mentioned her inheritance in passing, braced for a shift in Ethan's demeanor. Instead, he frowned, concern creasing his brow. "That's a lot to carry, Violet. I'd be paralyzed, worrying about managing it right." No greed, no sly interest, just empathy for the responsibility. The moment crystallized her growing trust. Ethan saw her, not her wealth, and that clarity felt like a gift Clara would have cherished. Rachel, over wine at Violet's condo, teased her about Ethan. "He's a keeper, Vi. No red flags yet?" Violet smiled, swirling her glass. "Not yet, but I'm still watching." Rachel grinned. "Good. Keep him honest." Violet's therapy had taught her vigilance didn't mean cynicism. It meant valuing herself enough to demand authenticity. Ethan's patience, his willingness to let her set the pace, aligned with Clara's lesson. True wealth lay in relationships built on mutual respect. As summer bloomed, Violet felt a tentative hope. Ethan wasn't a replacement for the past, but a possibility for a future where trust could grow, nurtured by time and truth. She wasn't rushing. She didn't need to. Clara's wisdom, etched in her heart, guided her toward a life where love, not money, defined her riches. Violet Thompson stood in a simple white dress in a sun-dappled garden, her hand clasped in Ethan Harper's. The small wedding held at a local botanical centre was intimate, just Rachel, a few close friends, and Ethan's parents, who beamed from folding chairs. No lavish decor, no extravagant menu, just wildflowers on wooden tables and a string quartet playing softly. At 34, Violet had learned to cherish what mattered, and this day, grounded in love and authenticity, was everything she needed. Ethan, in a navy suit, squeezed her hand as they exchanged vows, his steady voice promising partnership, not possession. Her heart felt full, not with the weight of wealth, but with trust earned through time. As they cut a modest vanilla cake, Rachel raised a glass, her toast equal parts heartfelt and cheeky. To Violet, who kicked a thief to the curb and found a guy who doesn't suck. Laughter rippled through the guests, and Violet grinned, catching Ethan's amused eye. Later, as they swayed to a slow song, she reflected on the moment that changed everything, standing outside her old apartment, overhearing Ryan and Abigail's plot to steal her inheritance. Had she walked in a minute later, she might have shared the news, opened a joint account, and lost it all to Ryan's cunning exit, perhaps cloaked in a fabricated affair or sudden crisis. That accidental truth, though agonizing, had saved her. Violet didn't dwell on Ryan often. She'd heard he was in prison, his appeals exhausted, but the details didn't interest her. His choices were his own, a path of greed that led to ruin. Hers had led here, to a garden filled with people who valued her for her warmth, her curiosity, not her bank account. Clara's lesson, penned in that keepsake note, had taken root. True wealth was in relationships, not dollars. Violet saw it in Rachel's fierce loyalty, in her students' eager questions, in Ethan's quiet habit of leaving her favorite tea on the counter after a long day. The reception wound down, and Violet and Ethan slipped away to a bench under a magnolia tree, the air sweet with bloom. "Happy?" he asked, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "More than I thought possible," she said, meaning it. She'd told him about Ryan months ago, sharing the betrayal and her fears over coffee at a diner. Ethan had listened, his hand steady on hers, offering no quick fixes, just presence. "I can't promise perfection," he'd said then, "but I'll always choose honesty." That promise, proven in countless small acts, was why she stood here now, a ring on her finger. Violet didn't know what lay ahead. Life was too unpredictable for certainties. Challenges would come, maybe even heartaches. But she was no longer the woman who trusted blindly, nor the one who feared every shadow. Ryan's betrayal had forged her, teaching her to value sincerity above all. Clara's wisdom, her greatest gift, shone in this moment. A life rich with love, built on trust that grew like roots, deep and enduring. As the stars emerged, Violet leaned into Ethan.